Identity is an interesting factor, something that defines who we are and establishes how we'll react and how we'll live our lives, right? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's StepsBasic, and welcome back to my Stream of Consciousness video. For those of you who don't know, Stream of Consciousness is a series where I basically take a calmer tone, think about something for a while, and then talk. And this week I have chosen identity. First of all, let's get the announcements out of the way. Sorry I took yesterday off without warning. Follow me on Twitter if you want to have all my up-to-date alerts, like if I'm not going to have a video ready, if the internet's acting funny, or if I plan to take the day off. Even still, yesterday was last minute. I just took the day off in the morning. And that actually got me thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, because within the first 2 hours I was going crazy. For the longest time, me as me, I've been a workaholic. I've always been a workaholic. All the way back to before I was in the Navy, to while I was in the Navy, to now. I've always put my job ahead of a lot of things. And I think it all kind of ties back to when I was younger and I got a job to weed my trailer park, to basically go around the entire trailer park and pull up all the weeds. I don't know why I have to explain that, because I'm pretty sure everyone knows what weeding means. And I did exactly as much work as I needed as much money as I needed. And I got in trouble for that. And I took it to heart. I was young. I wasn't quite 10 yet, maybe 10. Definitely not a teenager yet. It's hard to remember what the timeline of when I was back in there. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. But I took it to heart, like never half butt a job, Never do a job halfway. Doesn't matter if you've earned as much as you needed. Doesn't matter if you've done what was asked about you, or what you asked of yourself, I should say. Is the point is to always finish the job. And yeah, that was a turning point, as it were, for me, because after that, anytime I got a job, I finished it. I did it from start to finish, and if it was my responsibility, I took responsibility for it. That's not to say that when things came up that weren't my responsibility and people expected me to do them, I did them, because I'm not the type of person to steal other people's stuff either. And that's probably another story for another time, but, So establishing the workaholic thing. Now, that's something, that's a visible thing, but also an internal thing, to the point where, people will see when you work. People will see when you work hard, and people see the results. But internal wise, it's a bit of a different experience. Whereas if you're working on something, you can't stop, and it makes it really difficult for you. And then, like, when there's work that needs to be done, you sit there and you get a little itchy, kind of like an addiction. But that's just one aspect of who I am. Another one, talking about identity is such a multifaceted topic that, to be perfectly honest, there's no way to properly cover it completely. It's an interesting entity because it exists outside of the person, and despite how much what somebody would want to do, it's not something we really have full control over. You know what I'm saying? There's the old adage that, people always remember the first impression, and that's why they're important. because people remember how you present yourself. People remember how you act, and they'll remember what they can see. And for me, it's I've always tried to put my best foot forward first, but I mean, like I've mentioned before, if you see me out in the real world, I'm a bit of a different person than what you may expect, because it's not that I'm putting on too much of a alternate personality when I get online. It's just that I'm comfortable. And when I'm not here, I'm not comfortable, and it's kind of hard. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that I'm not comfortable anywhere, but no, I will always try to present myself well to people, but if you don't talk to me, if you don't engage with me, I look like I'm angry. A point solidified by my new neighbors, actually. Yeah, it was kind of funny. The guy who moved in next door, he came over finally and said hi, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, I've been wanting to come over and say hi to you for a while, but you always look like you're so angry. I'm like, it's kind of funny the way I approach a lot of stuff. I mean, I've said it before. I don't really care a lot about what people think about me, because honestly, that's the best way to get yourself dragged down into an abyss of panic and anxiety and whatnot. And it's a hard position to get to, and as far as I've seen it, there's two specific types of people who carry that mentality. 3 if you count the liars. Because, I mean, like I said, liars, there's a number of people who will try to put that idea out there, like, oh, I don't care about what other people think about me. But then they start to get all sorts of upset and annoyed when, somebody points out something about them that they don't like. It's like, I think you have that backwards a little bit, bud. But, then there's the 2 specific forms of actual I don't care about what other people think about me. And there's the one, which is my route, which is, well, yeah, I don't really care about what other people think about me. I'm not going to treat other people badly for it. Because at the very least, even if I don't care, I don't want to make them uncomfortable. I don't want to make them upset, because there's no point in it. It's just cruelty for cruelty's sake. And then, of course, there's the other person. The person who IDGAF and then treats everyone like snot, And I've never liked those people, to be perfectly honest. People who treat other people like snot just because they don't care what other people think. Yeah, they're not good people. They're not likable people. It's really hard to enjoy being around them. And sources of identity come more often, like the internal especially, come more often from life, how you've developed. And developing the I don't care mentality is tricky, because as kids, I mean, as humans, we're social creatures. So the whole idea of keeping a mentality where you don't care what other people think is counterintuitive, because as a social creature, we want to be a part of our societies. We want to be a part of our groups, communities, etc. And for the most part, that entails a certain degree of, I need these people to like me. And so, developing the I don't care comes from, I'd say, probably about the same place, but deviates to the different identities, coming from basically a point of people constantly hating you, or at least treating you badly. And it depends on the final thing, the ultimate thing, bitterness. I don't care comes from bitterness. And whether or not you choose to embrace or resist. Because it comes down to, if nobody likes me, why should I like anybody else? And so as a part of my own mentality, I decided way back in the day when I was a kid that I want to make people happy. I went from I want to make everybody happy to I want to make people laugh at least one time during the day, to doing the best I can when I can. And as funny as that is, tying into my identity and whatnot, it's always a weird thing because people are like, well, if you don't care what people think, then why are you trying to make them happy? You ever heard of the term good for goodness sake? Then, of course, you embrace the bitterness and the I don't care, so why do they care sort of thing. Why are you going to try to make people's lives harder than they already are? Now, to be perfectly honest, I'm very much of the mind that other people should not matter when it comes to determining your identity. Like, so many people put too much stock in what other people think, what other people accept about them. And that, in way too many ways, is just setting yourself up for disappointment, depression, anxiety. And there's always going to be people who don't accept parts about you. So, nuts to them, man. Don't base your identity on how people define you, what people will accept of you, because your life is yours and you have to live your life. But then again, at the same time, I do understand the external validation. Unfortunately, identity is such a fragile thing, Everybody's fragile in their own way when it comes to, their own identities and stuff. You get your overly powerful masculine man who's given a moment of weakness, and then all of a sudden, he's a wimp. Oh, external validation. That guy's got a pretty fragile identity. The woman who is suddenly deprived of the one thing that she feels defines her as a woman becomes embittered and angry. Fragile identity, man. We're humans. It's one thing we got to remember is that as humans, we're squishy. And thinking about all the things that define me as me, my identity, and thinking about the long road that led to me being me is interesting. Something I need to try to hold on to these days. I don't care, but at least I'm not going to hurt people for it. I'm a dad, and that's the one thing that I've always wanted to be, and I live up to it as best as I can. Apparently I'm doing a good job. Workaholic, but I'm also incredibly family-centric, so I do my best not to work when the kid's around, even though that sometimes leads to me not getting my jobs done. That just means that when she's not around, I work a little extra harder. Family. That's one of my big things. It's probably because of my upbringing. Raised in a Hispanic culture, which is heavy into your families and whatnot. At least it was back when I was a kid in my hometown. It used to be completely family centric. You'd have 3-4 generations living in the same house, and something I kind of wanted. My own family was different, but different cultures. They came from a different culture than I was raised in, so I guess technically the only real thing, the only real message, I guess, to draw from identity is you are who you are. People are going to see you as what they want to see you as. The idea is to find a good balance between it. Rise above the negatives. Stay where you are if you're happy where you are. If you like what people think about you, be careful. Because like I said, there's always going to be people who don't accept you. It leads to an interesting idea about acceptance versus tolerance. Because while you can't force people to accept you, society will force them to tolerate you. Provided, of course, you don't do anything bad that involves hurting people. Because then society will do its best to remove you. Life's funny, man. We live in a society, right? Isn't that the phrase these days? Social creatures are weird. Oh, that's an interesting aspect of my personality, too, thinking about it. Cabin fever. Now, I don't technically have any sort of diagnosed cabin fever, but the Navy definitely gave me that wanderlust. Come to a point where I just can't stay indoors if I'm told to. It's like, I want to leave. I want to get out of here. I mean, I can. I just don't like it. I'd say this might be one of the shorter topics because, not going to lie, there are a few things I'm worried about talking about on account of modern day society. Afraid's too strong a word. There are a few things I'm reticent to talk about because of modern day society. But, I mean, I basically covered everything that I really think about when it comes to identity. All boils down to you are who you are. You can change yourself if you want. But really, learning to accept yourself and all your flaws and all your shortcomings, it's a powerful thing. People don't realize how powerful it is. But that's all I've got for you for today. Thank you all so much for joining me for this stream of consciousness. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Remember, like if you liked, comment if you want, subscribe if you like me. If you want to see more from me, you know. But above all and everything else, have a good night.